All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled AI as Academic Innovation, Your Opportunity to Lead. My name is Dr. Anwar Hijaz. I'm a political science faculty member at Saddleback College, and I'm also a faculty mentor for the CVC at One. It is my pleasure to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to today's webinar with our amazing facilitators. So before I present, or before our facilitators present themselves and get started on the session, I'd like to share a little bit of information. During the webinar, we will be sharing out a survey at the end of the session or close to the end, where we really appreciate if you can fill it out. It does not take a lot of time, but it really does help us to create programming in the future and to give us feedback of what you are looking for. So if you could take some time to fill that out, we greatly appreciate it. I'd like to also thank our ASL interpreters for being here today and allowing us to make this session accessible and inclusive for all participants. And then the last thing is that while we offer digital badges for course completions, we do not offer badges for completing webinars. But if you do need proof of attendance, please stay on till the end, fill out the survey and request a copy of it to be sent. And you can use this as confirmation for your attendance. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it into our wonderful presenters, Julius, Scott James, and Fabiola Torres. If you could please feel free to introduce yourselves and we can get started.
Hello. Just one moment for the interpreters, just to remind everyone, if you're reading or if you just naturally speak really quickly, if you could pretty please slow down, take a breath in between thoughts or sentences, whichever, because we don't want to tie our fingers in knots. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that reminder. I know we tend to, as academics, speak really fast. All right, Fabiola, James, and Scotty. Scott, if you would like to get started and I
Yeah,
introduce ourselves.
I think I'll kick us off here, and then we're going to pass it over to Fabiola and then to Jim to close us out. So I'll share my screen first. So hi everybody, thank you so much for attending today and for having me as a panelist today. We're excited about chatting with you about AI and your opportunity to use AI in a positive and helpful manner. First and foremost, I'm a professor of educational technologies and distance education coordinator at Santiago Canyon College. And I'm also an AI fellow for the California Community College Chancellor's Office. And as an ed tech teacher, I've been teaching educational technologies for a long time, and AI is one of my favorite classes to teach right now, AI for educators. Before we really get started on what we're going to be talking about today, I really want to define artificial intelligence because I've learned through giving workshops and through talking with colleagues that everybody has a lens that they view AI through. And this lens may be shaped by how it's impacting your life. And so some people are seeing AI as a lens from like it as a cheating tool that students use to cheat on assessments. And others see it as an empowerment tool to help them really to give them ability amplification or give them the ability to do more than they could without it. And what I want to do is I want to frame it as a yes and situation or conversation that we have today. Um, and really start to sort of frame AI from the beginning and then kind of build on through. I will be talking to you about AI as ability amplifiers, and then we'll transition over to Fabiola, who will really give you some better beneficial insights into teaching with AI, and then on to Jim, who will be discussing regular and substantive interaction as well, as it relates to AI and its impact on online learning. So first, I want to frame AI as a tool, and the tool is something that we can all use, and there are appropriate uses of the tool and inappropriate uses of the tool. And I want to do this with a quick analogy. We all, as babies, we all learn to walk, right? And our parents can hold us up by our arms and help us take our first steps. And I sort of want you to frame AI like the parent holding the child up. It's really assisting them, but eventually it's helping them to learn how to walk over time. And then once they learn how to walk, then they're off to a bicycle, another maybe an AI tool, right? That can get them to places faster and give them an opportunity for fun or to commute or then onto a car, then onto an airplane. And all these technologies don't degrade the fact that walking is super important, right? They're just all aids that give us another gear in order to be able to do things differently. And I wanted to give you a story about cognition and how educational technology tools really help us to promote learning and to promote our natural abilities. And so one thing that I started my career in the disabled student program at Santiago Kenyon College. And one of the things that was really interesting for me to learn was that I would teach students how to use the educational technology tools to help them overcome their learning disabilities. And one of the tools that I used with one of my students was a student came to me and he was just graduated high school and he was completely blind and he had just become blind. And so I taught him how to use the computer without a monitor or a mouse, if you can imagine that. And I reflected on this student reading at a very choppy computer voice, text to speech way, in about 100 words a minute or so. And I thought, wow, this kid's going to have tremendous amount of grit to get through a college degree reading at that kind of speed. But about 6 months later, he came back into my office with a problem with his computer. And I said, sure, let me hear what the computer's saying. And I want to just let you guys hear it. Did you guys hear that? Give me a thumbs up. um, I'll play it again for you here, but this was text to speech and it's about over 400 words a minute. So it's the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. You'll see that the little blue highlighted area. That's what the computer's reading to you. And just listen to see how many words you can pick out of it. So my student was reading now at over 400 words a minute. And I thought to myself, wow, like you have a mini superpower. And because he was reading at 2 to 3 times the speed as somebody who was sighted was reading at. And that really made me reflect over time as to how text-to-speech technology tools and now other educational technology tools can really promote our own natural abilities. So what's an ability amplifier? Well, these ability amplifiers using EdTech through an EdTech lens, they can help us remove friction points. So ideation, vibe coding, advice, suggestions. They can enhance learning, like building durable skills, memorization, analogies, language translation. And they can increase agency, giving people control and choice over picking their learning experiences. And that's how we should really start to think about AI and how we apply it to our curriculum. What I observed with AI, though, was interesting. When, as an ed tech teacher, I work with students a lot with technology tools. And I noticed that even my colleagues, I've noticed that those who were neurodiverse, or had ADHD or autism, or was on the spectrum, they gravitated towards AI right away. They saw the value in it and they used it as power users. And it was so interesting to me. And what they did though was it helped them with like that planning and organization. Like if you have some anxiety, sometimes starting a new project, starting a new process is really difficult to get over that hump of the writer's block or just getting started. And so these technology tools, the chatbots, can help you actually get started with planning and organization. They can help you with vibe coding, chunking, getting information quicker. I don't know if you guys know a lot about vibe coding, but vibe coding is basically having a conversation with an AI. It's like having, if you're creating a computer application, you can have a computer scientist sitting right next to you and tell them what to do, and they'll do it for you. It's pretty cool. So it enables you to do more than you can with your own natural abilities and helps you learn along the way. And it gives you a, confidence building, private judgment-free practice, the ability to ask over and over again, maybe convert learning into sports analogies or culturally appropriate analogies for you. So it really, really helps, particularly students with neurodiversity, to get started and get over those humps and those barriers. And this isn't just what I've observed. I started diving in and did a little miniature lit review and found that IBM has actually been onto this for a while. They have an autism and neurodiversity hiring program that they've had for almost a decade now. And what they were looking at was just really trying to get neurodiverse perspectives. But when AI came out, they found out that their employees who are neurodiverse were really outperforming neurotypical employees in using those AI tools just inherently. And so they, oops, sorry. And so they actually did some studies on it and proved that their neurodiverse employees were outperforming their other employees, and now they're actively recruiting more and more of them to do this work. But what about the MIT study that a lot of you have heard about? I'm sure many people have heard about the study where MIT has proven that AI is harmful to learning or something like that, something along those lines. I mean, that's sort of a misinterpretation of the study, really, but that's kind of the water cooler talk that I hear when people talk about the MIT study, is that there's a valid concern that using AI is not going to benefit in learning. And I'd like to just frame this with another analogy, if I could. So what they did was they said they took a student and they said, write this paper and don't use any other outside tools. And then they measured the learning that with a functional MRI machine, like measured how much brain cognition was going on. Then they gave the same assignment to a student, but said you can use ChatGPT to write it for you, and then they measured it. What they're missing, though, is the context of, remember that analogy of the bicycle. Certainly, if you're learning fundamental writing skills, that's a lot different than if you're a grad student doing a lit review and using technology tools to help you organize and ideate and write things of that nature when your already ability to write is already high. So they're asking the wrong question because AI is more like that bicycle. It enables you to do more than you could without that tool. So another analogy would be let's redefine a study where I give you data, two students' data. One, I'll give it to you in a pamphlet format, actual paper, and I'll give you a pencil and paper. And I want you to add up all the data for disproportionately impacted student groups, and then tell me what I need to do to close those gaps. And then I'm going to give student B some or a Excel document and Power BI and other powerful tools, and I'll say the computer can do all that analysis for you. But now I want you to look at that analysis and tell me what to do to narrow those gaps. So they're kind of misaligned, right? Because if you're asking the student to learn math, then student A is going to learn more. If you're asking to close equity gaps, student B is going to be more empowered to do so with Power BI. So what we need to do as educators is design for agency and visibility. And one of the things that I'm going to give you as a concrete giveaway or strategy for designing to value the process rather than valuing the final artifact is just a really quick one from PlayLab. I love PlayLab, but a lot of people don't know about some of the back-end features that PlayLab has. PlayLab is a custom AI chatbot tool, and it will give you the ability to actually see what conversations your students are having with the chatbot. And so, for example, if I create a chatbot and then the students have a conversation with it, I can set up a rubric in the back end called a conversation review, where I tell the app what I find as success for that conversation. So, what is the goal of my app? And what is a successful conversation with my app? What I did was I had my students have a debate with the app about writing and AI. And this is what it ended up having. It said, like, it can evaluate the conversation that my students were having with it. I can look at the entire conversations that my students were having with it, but it actually aligned my rubric with their conversation to tell me if it met that goal or not. So that learning is actually visible so that you can do, like, for example, this student did not meet the attended objective. So then I can have a conversation with the student about their conversation with the chatbot, and we can give them feedback when it's timely and meaningful for them. And I know that Fabiola is going to further this sort of topic by giving you some shared strategies on how to spark that cognition in your students. Fabi, take it away.
Hey everyone. So I'm not going to start until we fix the problem with the screen. So Anwar, if you could unmute yourself and provide us some guidance before I begin.
Thank you, Fabiola. I actually have no idea what's going on. So if anyone, Zoom's constantly doing updates. So I know some people are saying they cannot see the screen. I'm able to see the screen. I'm able to see the slides. I think it might be because the interpreters are pinned, because right now I'm only seeing them. So let me see. Itzel, if you're on, if you have an idea of what I'm only seeing the interpreter. That's what I'm only seeing as well.
I think that's all we should be seeing right now, but I'm going to suggest Fabiola go ahead and start your screen share just to make sure everybody else can see it as they wish.
Yes, stand by.
Also, there's usually tabs at the top that allow you to see presentation view or participant view. So make sure that
Yeah,
you're
and
looking for those. And
some
something
folks
that
in the
says
chat were
remove
saying they
spotlight.
weren't seeing those. Yeah.
There's also a remove spotlight sometimes.
Yeah, I think in the webinar version, things have changed a bit because people are saying they're not seeing those. And I know I see tabs, but I think that's because we're co-hosts.
So I do see the slides now. Can anyone else see them?
Yes, I can see
Yes,
them.
people are saying yes, yes, yes. Okay, so
Cool.
hopefully this will fix the problem for a bit, and we will all continue to learn how Zoom is working, but hopefully this should work. All right, Fabiola, if you want to go ahead and...
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Fabiola Torres, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, but I am first and foremost an instructor of ethnic studies. If I'm slowing down my tone and my voice is because I want to make sure that our sign language interpreters, which we should say thank you to, can catch the message that I am conveying. So the slides deck that I'm going to share with you, the slides will be shared. I will present to you my Gamma slides as well as an accessible screen reader friendly document. Okay? All right, everybody, let's begin. So the webinar description says that we are at a challenging turning point. And that's true. But I want to name the part we don't always say out loud. Online faculty are tired. So the weight we carry is very heavy, okay? We're doing it all. We are learning AI tools. We're creating AI policies. Many of us are trying to figure out whether or not our students are giving us their authentic voice or not. We need to document RSI. We have to align with ADA standards. We have to meet Title V requirements. We have to pass POCR reviews. We are being asked to compress 16 weeks into 8 weeks. I mean, let's not forget, we have to all redo our course outline of records to have the common course numbering. That's a lot of work that's adding to our cognitive load. And it's been multiplied exponentially. So when we pour our hearts into our Canvas page, and then we have to retrofit it or redesign it for compliance, accessibility, alignment, and documentation, that friction is real. And it slows us down. It dims our momentum. It fractures our creativity. And that toll matters. And while all of this, what I'm hoping I get across is these elements are extremely important. And it doesn't say that we don't care. It's just that it's becoming like these building blocks that are starting to get in the way of our ability to find that joy in our teaching. So I want to reframe this, okay? So the real problem isn't compliance. It's actually invisible labor, okay? We're all becoming instructional designers. We're all becoming compliance reviewers. We're all becoming, discipline-specific designers. And while we all love all this work, that labor has changed. And especially those of us who teach online, all that labor is that invisible labor that gets in the way of our joy. So what's actually happening is that this invisible labor is starting to accumulate, and it's starting to get in the way of our relational energy toward our students. And so why does this matter with RSI? Well, meaningful interaction, or as we call it, the real RSI, cannot exist if our relational design isn't there. We can't have substantive interaction in a course that does not feel safe. But RSI is not the beginning of relational design. It's the evidence of it. Okay? So if compliance consumes our energy, then that relational design suffers. And that's the real risk at this turning point. Okay? So what if we use AI to help us break down those blocks that are in the way of our hearts pouring into our online courses? So Scott talked about how AI can actually be our superpower. And that's really where I want us to reframe how we can use AI to augment those superpowers, to augment that relationship we have with our students, that humanized, human first design that shines through. So I'm going to give you first Coco. So I used PlayLab to design Coco. Coco is the equity-minded syllabus redesigner. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a little bit of Coco. All right, so Coco takes you through a private conversation, okay? Because, when we have our syllabus, again, we have so much heart in there. And then, like, if we ask someone to review it, that academic armor that we wear gets in the way, and like we're so uncomfortable sharing our sources. I know some of us don't, but I know a lot of faculty that are just self-conscious of their own work. So Coco allows you to upload your syllabus, okay? And then what it does, it starts to break it down and give you feedback, okay? And this has been loaded with a lot of research on the equity-minded syllabus. And so it even gives you suggestions. It starts to give you language. And so this way you can go back and create your syllabus into a more equity-minded process. So if I may, let me just go here. So after I had Coco review my syllabus and I made my changes, I went ahead and created a page here in Canvas. And so it looks like this. All right, cool. But it goes further. I created CourseCraft. CourseCraft is a Canvas page architect. Okay, it actually retrofits your Canvas page to be more POCR aligned, ADA compliant, more prettier. And I want to show you how that looks. And yes, folks, I will provide the links to these bots. So here's CourseCraft. All right. So, and suddenly it froze. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay. So CourseCraft, when you open it, you'll have here about the app. And it'll tell you, what do you want? Do you want it to change your course design? You're looking for alternative assessments. It gives you all these choices, but I want to focus on something. Here is a helpful prompt for Canvas page UDL makeovers. All you have to do is copy the following link. I'm sorry, the following prompt. So I have here a prompt that I created. And so this is how I would do it. I would go to my Canvas page. Y'all remember these? I don't know about you. I was excited when I learned how to make this line. Okay. Even more excited when I learned how to make these boxes. And I thought I was awesome. So here's a page. It looks so 2021. So I ran it through CourseCraft, and this is how it looks after I ran it with CourseCraft. Okay. And so you click here, And so you have all the embedded links and everything is there. And so one of the elements I used is something called mobile-friendly, mobile-forward design. I want to do a shout out to Dr. Alex Rocky from Bakersfield, who's done a lot of work on mobile-friendly course design that really inspired me to design my courses. So I went ahead and used the language mobile-forward, mobile-friendly course design in my prompt. So this is why it came out like this. And it's super pretty. Let me go ahead and close this up. Okay. So that is CourseCraft. Last but not least, a lot of our CIOs are, I don't want to say forcing, but encouraging us to convert our 16-week courses into 8 weeks. That's bonkers. How do we do that? So again, many of us probably panic and condensed our 16 weeks and we do week 1 and week 2 together and suddenly that's there. Boom, we're done. Well, I'm going to say right here, I created a bot that's called Mighty 8. Mighty 8 helps faculty take their 16-week course and turns it into an 8-week by using the course outline of record. Okay, so Mighty 8 gives you these inputs, the name of your class, you paste your course objectives from the core, okay, you paste the SLO from the core, you paste the course lecture content from the core, okay, course stands for course outline of record. And then what it does, it starts to build an 8-week course. Okay, it gives you a visualization. Will you alter this? Of course, but at least you're seeing a possibility. Okay, your voice will still be part because you're the one building it. Okay, so it actually builds it for you and you could keep iterating it. You could even ask it, can you start building out week 1? Can you help me build out week 2? And so on and so forth. Okay, so I wanted to read this. Let me make this bigger so we can all see it. This is what human first AI means. We decide how AI serves our work. AI does not define it. These tools hold the institutional expectations so we can hold the relationship, dialogue, trust, mentorship, and of course, student growth. So building governance literacy through community. Now, I know we hear the word governance and it's just like, ew, it sounds like a meeting I can, I want to avoid. But I want to reframe the concept of governance because I learned this from PlayLab. Okay, is that none of this work we built should be a lonely process. Okay, we need to be able to define how we use AI as a community. Okay, where does AI sit? So collectively, we ask what AI can handle and what should we fight to maintain it human-centered. Okay, what are those relational boundaries? Okay, where does automation end and human connection begin? Okay, and then how can we automate? What are these tasks that we can use automation for that drain our creativity? And again, once again, what do we protect? Okay, how do we protect that pedagogical heart and relational design at our core? Okay, so what I'm sharing today and what I am launching, and I know ASCCC is also working on this, is that we are now going to start to create community-driven spaces so that this invisible labor doesn't wear us out. And so then we can then focus on that relational labor that leverages that RSI. Okay, so if you have a bot to contribute, if you have, so that, let me say that again. If you have a bot to contribute or you want to discover new tools, I am going to be sharing a Padlet that you can go ahead and share. And I did see Professor Butterly on the chat, and she has an amazing tool called Comply that I hope she shares, because Comply is also a really awesome tool that she built in PlayLab. It's a beautiful app that also takes our course content and turns it into an ADA document, ADA code for Canvas. It really does alleviate that labor. Okay, I will share that. And so here I want to close it up with, we're here to elevate our educational quality with meaningful innovation and a professional community. So I want to propose that we reduce this invisible labor. We protect the relational design that makes RSI powerful, that we use AI for the architecture that stabilizes our courses, and we keep humans at the center. Then together we can share these solutions so that we could all feel that joy that we have in our teaching. So human first online design means that we use AI to carry the institutional and invisible labor so faculty can stay focused on dialogue, trust, and growth. That isn't beyond RSI, that is RSI. So I want to say thank you. I will put the presentation links as Jim starts to speak. I'll do it quickly so that we can make sure that we have our attention to Jim. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, I hope I stopped sharing.
You did.
Yes, you did.
Great.
It worked great.
And Van, I see your question in the chat, and it is perfect because it definitely leads into where I'm going to go in the next and final section of this webinar. All right.
Okay, we see your screen. I see it. Everyone give a thumbs up if you see it as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm Jim Julius. I'm the faculty coordinator of online education at Miracosta College. I'm honored to be part of this webinar with Scotty and with Fabi, who are statewide AI fellows. I do not have a role like that. However, I do have a role with the ASCCC Open Educational Resources Initiative, the OERI, as their lead for distance education and OER. But I want to speak a little bit more to Van's question about RSI. So RSI gets tossed around a lot, and it's short for regular and substantive interaction. And regular and substantive interaction, I'll get into in a minute, but it is the core of federal regulation about distance education. And it's also part of a key part of how the ACCJC evaluates our colleges on our distance education programs. So I also want to start by doing a little bit of an AI disclosure. I like to be very transparent about my use of AI. And I used Copilot. If you are at a Microsoft school, you probably have access to Copilot. And Copilot used to be very not good compared to other tools like ChatGPT and Gemini. However, Copilot has gotten much better. And what I like about Copilot is that it has access to my institutional documents, to my institutional emails. So I can start with some ideas about what I want to present, but I can make sure that it's referencing my email history where I've had lots of conversations with folks about these kinds of topics. And it can pull together a presentation that's not pulled out of thin air. It's not just made up of things that it made up, but it's really drawing on my own ideas that I've expressed in various ways. So Copilot's what I used primarily to create this presentation. And I will point out a couple places like the title, where it wanted to call it Updating RSI for the Artificial Intelligence Era. And really, no, we're updating RSI, or regular and substantive interaction, for our students. And so I want to really talk about moving from compliance-driven checklists to equity-centered open pedagogies. So backing up a bit, the fundamental RSI requirements, these are stated in federal regulation, they're reiterated in ACCJC standards and rubrics for how our colleges' distance education programs are evaluated. So that R piece is regular. So RSI requires instructors to initiate communication regularly on a predictable schedule. It also requires that you have substantive interaction. So it lays out specific types of interaction, like a direct instruction and providing feedback that should be in the instructor's own words and language. There's also a component related to monitoring and support. Instructors are responsible for monitoring student progress and proactively supporting learners. We should not be relying on automated feedback. So AI tools have a lot of promise in providing a lot of direct engagement with our students, but that doesn't count for RSI because it's not coming from us. So ideally, RSI guidelines intend for distance learning to remain human-centered. And I would argue that the notions behind RSI idealize in-person learning as sort of the standard, and we're trying to mirror it with this engagement with the instructor on regular basis, as if you were showing up to class once or twice or 3 times a week and having those kinds of in-person interactions. I don't necessarily think that is the world that we live in these days, but it's the regulations that we live with. So in traditional RSI compliant online courses, you'll see a lot of emphasis on sort of traditional discussion boards and weekly announcements and material being provided from the instructor and making sure that feedback is provided and that you have certain communication policies spelled out in your syllabus. This results in pretty standardized interaction patterns, things that can feel very rote for a lot of students. This can be helpful for many students to have that kind of very predictable, structured schedule, but I think there are other ways we can do this that will help more students engage more meaningfully and effectively. So compliance without flexibility, without multimodal interaction, without a feeling of personalization, without cultural responsiveness, that might meet RSI standards, but it's probably not effective teaching, not what we're really looking for. And so I know we have Michelle Pacansky-Brock with us here today. She's really helped a lot of us across the system understand humanization of our online classes. And this idea has been around for a long time. This is good teaching. This goes beyond what I was just talking about as sort of that baseline of RSI standards. It emphasizes the human presence of the instructor and the personal connection that we can and should make with our students, that we should use video and audio to make ourselves real to our students, that we foster trust and equity by validating students as individuals. But we also know this comes with a huge workload and challenges of burnout. It's a lot to ask. As Fabi was mentioning, how do we have this, but also not, work ourselves to the bone? So in addition to those workload challenges, there are other challenges here as well with the traditional model, where text-heavy interactions can exclude certain learners. And as we try for more multimedia, we can have accessibility challenges. A lot of traditional RSI methods, I think, invite the misuse of AI when students feel like they're just part of a rote post once, reply twice discussion board every week. They're pretty to turn AI. They're stressed out and don't find it intrinsically meaningful or motivating. And we also find ourselves as instructors often performing a lot of repetitive tasks and not doing what we really want to be doing. So I want to suggest, in some broad strokes, some innovative RSI compliant pedagogy, and also get to the point about leadership and talk about how we may, from our own roles, and I know we have a variety of folks here, some of you are not necessarily envisioning yourselves as institutional leaders, but I think we're all involved in conversations, even if it's only with the colleague across the hall or our disciplinary colleagues, that are really important in this moment. And there was some chat earlier about how challenging these changes are, and I'll get to that in a minute. But In terms of what I would consider sort of a modern, updated RSI compliant pedagogy, speaking in some ways to what Fabiola was suggesting as well, that if we have AI tools that support our engagement, that support our students, that doesn't substitute for us, but it can take some of the burden of the repetition off of us to free us up for more direct interactions that really support our students at a personal level. AI tools are getting better and better at producing multimedia and creating really fantastic, taking our ideas, things, if you've been teaching for a long time, you have slides, you have lectures, you have notes, putting those things into AI tools like Notebook LM can create some fantastic resources that have incredible design, incredibly valuable graphic design and visual explanations for our learners that go beyond what almost any of us would be able to do with our own time. I also am a big proponent of the idea that AI can help us achieve the ideals that many of us may have held for a long time about universal design for learning, about giving students multiple ways to engage with our content and to express their understanding. UDL as an AI assistant can help us generate multiple means that we represent our content, can help us generate multiple ideas for how students can achieve outcomes in different ways without asking everyone to engage in exactly the same kind of task, which can all help our students take more ownership and find themselves in the material and the opportunities that we're asking them to engage with. So again, potentially, AI helps us shift our workload towards our students and away from the kind of repetitive and mundane tasks that Canvas sometimes sucks us into. I also fully want to acknowledge that if you go back in time and survey the history of educational technology, almost every new promising educational technology comes with this idea that it's going to reduce the workload on instructors of doing the ordinary things and allow more time for connecting with students. And I think the problem with the history is that we don't give up things. We just keep adding more to the plate. And yes, we may have gotten more efficient, but we've taken on more tasks. So my advocacy is that in order to realize the promise that I'm suggesting exists, we have to say no to some things. We have to be able to understand that the time that we're finding needs to be time that we pour back into our students. I also want to mention open pedagogy. I feel like this can be a force multiplier for us in this moment. With open pedagogy, we view our students as knowledge contributors, not just as vessels to be filled, and that if we're using open educational resources, the students themselves can help enhance those, can help extend those, can help customize those, and that creates an authenticity to what the students are doing that I think can also really increase student motivation. We're reducing textbook costs through OER and ZTC initiatives, but there's a real opportunity once those open resources become at the heart of the courses that we're teaching, that our students can continually be engaging with them, critiquing them, refining them, making them better for future students as a part of their work. That authenticity, I think, can foster a process-based approach that really makes transparent what students are doing, which is also a really important part of academic integrity in the AI age. It also, one final piece with AI and open pedagogy is that AI can streamline some of the media production that we might be asking of our students. And then they're really focused on the content and outcomes, not on the process of using multimedia to generate something, which I think is also really valuable. So where we might go as AI becomes ubiquitous in our environments, I know there's been some chat around this, but as our routine tasks get automated, hopefully that frees instructors up for the meaningful instructional work. And again, we have to say no to things to be able to say yes to that. There are promises, I think, with how AI can help us more quickly detect students that are in need of our interventions, whether it's our own personal interventions or someone else in our student support ecosystems at our colleges. We want to be able to get our students back on track as soon as possible through personal connection. We have I don't want to say luxury, we have the advantage as community college faculty to have fairly small classes where we have the opportunity to meet our students where they are. Let's take advantage of that. And so finally, I want to talk a little bit about leadership and change management. RSI as a design opportunity, not merely compliance, and thinking about these bigger picture ideas of how we can advise and work with our colleagues in designing online classes that meet RSI in some really new and interesting ways, but we don't have to worry about the compliance piece. So colleges need to invest in instructional designers. They need to invest in accessibility specialists. They need to invest in professional development. This stuff doesn't happen without those kinds of resources. So definitely look to those who have the purse strings, who have the opportunity to advocate for those, to do that. We need an environment in this moment where we're not paralyzed by the fear of students cheating, where we're not paralyzed by the fear of people misusing tools. We need inquiry, we need experimentation, we need innovation. This is a long-term change process. So let's connect the innovators and get folks sharing with one another. And building shared understanding through shared language, I think, is really important. And so I want to close by sharing with you one other resource really quickly. And this is something that some of you may have heard of. I've started this year a community of practice at my college. Again, big thanks to Michelle Pacansky-Brock for the inspiration behind this. But this resource that I'm sharing with you right now is an open resource. So I've been leading a community of practice that meets weekly for 30 minutes. I provide 30 minutes of suggested readings and suggested trying out of things. And this is open to faculty, professional, our classified professional colleagues and administrators. We come together for 30 minutes once a week to talk about what's going on in AI. Sometimes folks have had a chance to try things out or do some of the readings that I have suggested, sometimes not, but just having that space to connect, to meet folks, to build a community of folks that otherwise might not ever know one another from across the college. And the way this works is that each week is organized around an overall description, a set of suggested readings, some guidance on how I want them to try some different things. And this is very text heavy. I know most weeks aren't this full. And then some reflection questions. And those reflection questions form the heart of our 30 minutes that we spend together. So this page, which I put into the chat, is open to anyone. All of this can be copied and adapted for your own local use. Feel free to do that, and feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, Jen, anyone at my college is open, is available, can join this each week. It's really focused on my college and building the culture there. So we have a few minutes left. I'd love to hear from other folks that are leading in other ways or participating in interesting ways at your college for how to bridge this, what seems like a big divide in terms of the time we have, the energy we have, the enormity of the amount of AI tools that are out there, how to learn how to use them effectively, how to learn how to change our pedagogies. All of these things seem overwhelming, but would love to hear from others that have been involved in local initiatives that are working well. And yeah, so I'm going to stop talking and turn it back to the whole group for these last few minutes of discussion. And Meg, I see you've raised your hand.
Eric, is there a way to allow them to speak? Because I know this is set up as a webinar. So if you do have a question or a comment, you would have to type it out in the chat. So thank you so much to all our speakers, and feel free if anyone from the speakers would like to chime in and add something while people are typing out their questions. So I see one question. How do you, I guess, find time to keep learning with the work-life balance? And I think this is a common question that many of us consistently feel and face, especially after attending amazing webinars like this, where there's so many resources that are shared. How do we find the balance?
I'm still trying to find that. You know, I don't use the word balance anymore. I'm using the word harmony. And with harmony, you know, some things are louder than others, you know, when we harmonize. And so harmonizing our life it's a challenge. And what I shared bots that helped me in that process, because I'm one of those people that redesigns her courses like every semester. I teach ethnic studies, so there are things happening every semester that are relevant. So using CourseCraft to help me keep the pages looking pretty mobile friendly, uh, friendly for my students who are also neurodivergent, is extremely helpful, and it makes me happy when I click that button and the page is done. And so, and I can spend that time to be with family or with my own health. But I think Scotty and Jim could also share that it's still a battle. You know, I don't think any one of us are like done. It's a battle.
Yeah, I'd like to add that as a faculty, we need to advocate to our administrators the resources that we need to be successful in our classes. And I want your voice to be heard. So um, please, please feel empowered to reach out to your community and your college, administrators, and tell them what challenges you're experiencing, and let them know what resources that you need to be successful. I think that that's their job, to support your teaching and with the tools and technologies that you need. So don't be afraid to speak out about that. Things are changing so quickly that we do need time, and we need to give ourselves grace as well to
Mhm.
respond to this. But we also need the support of our administrators and our colleges to help us throughout these new challenges.
Jim, do you want to add anything that you've been doing?
Sorry, I was in the middle of trying to
Well,
share
no
my slides,
worries.
and I
We were
will.
just we were
Yeah,
just
no, no,
sharing
no, no,
out
no,
like
no. Yeah, um, I'll just say I have said no to a few things, and people are surprised when I do that. But for instance, we were supposed to write a new online education plan this year, and I just felt like it was not necessary and it was low on the priority list. And even though it just sort of was like a thing that seemed like it should be done because everyone just thought it should be done, I convinced our VPI that it was not necessary. So a lot of people felt very relieved when I did that. So, just being willing to say no, being willing to push back on things, being willing to question the assumptions of what must be done, I think is my best example of that. Having said that, go outside, be in nature, look at the incredible wildlife around us. That is what keeps me going. And I think it's really important, especially to have balance with all the time that I spend in front of a screen.
I do want to add to what both Scotty and Jim said. We can't sustain this individualistic, capitalistic view of our labor and who we are as humans. We need to break that. We need to be able to talk to our colleagues and say, how do you do it? We need to be able to share, I'm lost, I'm vulnerable, how? But in order to be vulnerable, we need to create these spaces. So yes, communities of practice are great, but start with our department, start with your office partner, start with your neighbor. How can we do this? Go out on a walk and talk about this, but we cannot continue being individualistic in this practice. If we want to model humanizing our online courses and being human first, we have to model that in our real life.
Thank you so much, Fabiola. I think there's so many claps and hearts and hugs because we can all agree. And we've all, with everything that's happening with AI, the speed of it, it is very overwhelming and it can feel very isolating. So it's important to slow down. And I think I really resonated with what Jim mentioned. Go outside and walk and get away from the computer. Because sometimes we need that. In these discussions of AI, we need no AI. We need to just, reflect, take a break. There's a lot of great comments in the chat. I don't see any specific questions.
Can I speak to Alethea's comment? Because I
Yes.
absolutely totally resonate with Alethea. There are so many very problematic things about AI and the way that a handful of very large LLMs dominate what we think is possible with AI and dominate the technical landscape. I'm really hopeful and that will change. And I think, as much as I would kind of just wish all that away, it's not going away. And so I feel I need to engage with it. But I will say, if you look at the page that I shared and you look at the readings, almost every week, we're not just like, try this AI tool, it's really cool. It's like, let's read about how oppressively workers who are tasked with cleaning the training data, exist. Let's look at the environmental impacts and put that in context. Let's look at the political power these companies wield and where they stand. Let's look at the privacy and security of our data and what's happening. I mean, all of those things are critically important. And in an hour, it's hard to address all of that. But I feel it's a both and. I mean, there are amazing things that this technology is doing that we want to empower ourselves and our students to use, but we also want to be very critical about what's going on behind the curtain, and absolutely that has to be hand in hand.
Thank you so much to our speakers, Jim, Scotty, Fabiola, and our ASL interpreters today. We really, really appreciate everyone's time for being here today. Of course, this discussion has only started and we will continue to have these amazing discussions. I did drop the survey in the chat. If you could please take a few moments to fill it out, we really greatly appreciate it. And of course, I know I saw many questions about the slides. The slides will be posted on the CVC at One webinar webpage. Just please allow like a week or so for captioning, and we will post the slides and the recording of this session. And of course, keep an eye out on that same webpage for future webinars. We have a really wonderful webinars lined up for this semester. With that, I want to thank you all for being here today, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much. And get some nice sunshine today. Take a walk and enjoy nature. Bye-bye.
Or touch the rain.
Or
Anwar,
touch the rain.
it's looking like some people are having issues with the form link. Can you reshare that before we close out the webinar?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll stay on. For those of you who need that webinar link, we will stay on for a few minutes to make sure we share it and you have
This is the
correct.
survey link, right?
Correct.
Okay. Let's see if that works.
So I know Rob asked a question that I didn't get to. I put just a quick answer to in the Q&A, but is there a Copilot equivalent to Notebook LM? So Notebook LM is really fundamentally oriented around the idea of RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where you're giving it what you want it to focus on, but you can do that with any tool, with any LLM. You can add your own sources and you can restrict it to primarily using those sources. It's just that I think Notebook LM does the best job at a lot of different tasks compared to other LLMs. If you have like data that you want to analyze, or you want a presentation generated based on a lot of data that you're giving it. So yeah, I would just say it's worth continually trying multiple tools because the tools are constantly changing what they're capable of, what their advantages are. There's never a right answer that lasts more than a couple weeks before it seems like something else is new in that space.
Hopefully that should have worked. I think it was set up that not everyone can respond to the survey. So success. Okay, thank you. Working now. Thank you, everyone. All right, have a wonderful day, everyone. I will go ahead and stop the recording.